Welcome back to the end of 2021 Accounting Working Group podcast. I'm your host, Stein Smith, and joining with me today on the end of the current year podcast, Ron Quaranta, the boss, the chairman, CEO of our group, WSBA. Ron, happy to have you here again, my friend.
Great to be here, Sean. Really do appreciate it. And just don't say boss in front of my wife. That might not go over well, but I appreciate the kind words. And it's great to be here, my friend.
Absolutely. And so obviously this past year has had a lot of action in the blockchain crypto asset space. Everything from DeFi and NFTs really bursting into the mainstream conversation. Privately issued stable coins really sort of moving onto the front burner, being covered now at the White House level. And then the whole idea of countries getting into the crypto game. I mean, there are all kinds of headlines and developments underway. But from your point of view, right, at your level, talking to people in all aspects of the blockchain crypto asset space, are there any core takeaways, right, outside of the headlines and the sort of froth going on out there? Are there any core sort of takeaways out of 2021 for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Sean. There's so much that's happened in 2021. And look, you and I know 2020 was a very challenging year, but very busy. 2021, I was likewise. I think one of the things that's really begun to seep into global markets and what I'll call the professional verticals, right? Accounting and law and banking and trading, really is this kind of an awareness that what was once considered a fringe market it's only for illicit activity has really come to the fore from the perspective of global market participants with an idea that at 2 point something trillion and climbing, that the pace of innovation is accelerating, and it's time that markets participants and all of the professions involved in those different markets really begin to understand what do these innovations mean for the future? What do they mean for the future from the perspective of how do we do banking? How do we engage in trading? How do we account for people being paid in crypto? So it's a very long-winded way of me saying that so many of the colleagues that you and I know, Sean, 5, 6, 8 or more years ago, who didn't care now have to care, are now becoming believers in, pardon me, in the idea that crypto technology, crypto assets, blockchain technology really offer us up an opportunity to reinvent that phrase you often hear me say, Sean, reinvent how we do what we do. And what are all of the benefits, but as well as challenges that come with that? It's really been an educational year for many, many people in different marketplaces.
Excellent points there, Ron. And honestly, the whole conversation on basically how crypto has sort of grown up, right, in the eyes of policymakers, both here and overseas. And building on your earlier points, I would just add that probably during this year, it was the year that really the international, the global, decentralized nature of blockchain and how crypto assets are developing really also sort of popped off the back burner and onto the front burner. And it's more and more obvious, I think, that from a policy point of view, compliance point of view, operational point of view, that there is no home or there is no home court edge, right, to any country or any area in terms of how blockchain and crypto will continue to develop and evolve going forward. And so in terms of those opportunities and those obstacles that you outlined, probably the best way to ask this are there any top maybe 2 or 3 opportunities, right, building on this increasing understanding of blockchain and crypto? And are there top 2 or 3 obstacles toward wider onboarding and wider usage of blockchain in everyday transactions?
Yeah, I look, there are a couple of things that come to mind immediately, and it's just so interesting, Sean, because you and I spend so much time talking to colleagues in different industry verticals and in different types of companies that when you and I have these kind of, what are the benefits, what are the opportunities conversations, there's 100 of them, and it's so hard. I want to speak a bit briefly to the accounting professional. This is probably, you know me well, Sean. We've known each other many years. I'm not an accountant. I just spend a lot of time with accountants. Digital CPA via our partnership with the AICPA happened in Nashville earlier this month, and it was a great turnout and great series of conversations. I think there's an accounting professional conversation there, and I think there's the broader, if you'll allow me, the kind of the broader conversation for the everyday, every one of us every day. I think at the accounting level, there are a couple of really specific strategic things that are happening. One is that this idea of quote unquote just doing taxes or just doing record keeping, whatever it may be. And I don't mean to minimize the importance of those, but the role of the accounting professional is evolving. You don't want to be, and fill in the blank, right? The accounting professional, the banking professional, the legal professional who doesn't have an answer to a question a client's going to give them around crypto or blockchain. And often colleagues in different professions, whether or not you think you have clients that are involved in crypto and blockchain, I promise you do. And in some instances, they may not even know it. So for the accounting professional, this is really an opportunity to do a couple of things. Accounting for a long time has been one of those trusted advisor professions, right? The accounting professionals not involved need to get involved in understanding crypto, the tax implications, the valuation and reporting implications, and being that trusted advisor. I think, again, this is really an opportunity to speak to the idea of growing consultative services. And you and I have seen this, Sean, right? There are many firms and accounting practices that have technology arms around consulting, and I think crypto and blockchain fit neatly into that consultative services kind of capability. I think at a broader holistic level, everyone's becoming much more comfortable with, and it's also a generational conversation, much more comfortable with, hey, I'm investing in Bitcoin. I'm using crypto to stake on a platform and I'm earning, I think it's interest, Sean. What do I do with it? My company's using blockchain to track membership or employees, for example. So I think it's what you and I've often talked about. Blockchain and crypto are seeping into the fabric of the everyday in the same way that 20 years ago, if you and I said open source or peer-to-peer at a bank or an accounting practice or a law firm, you and I would have been thrown out the door. Now they're pretty standard.
We still might be going forward. Still might be.
Our days of being thrown out of boardrooms, Sean, are not over. But those are things that are part of the everyday workings of the global economy. That's, in my opinion, what's happening now as well, and I think that's something worth focusing on.
Absolutely right. And the whole conversation, because I was just talking to somebody back the other day, and it honestly is that corporate accounting, public accounting, finance, law, and IT are almost combining into one sort of future type of product or service, right? Because as you so accurately put, in order to really add any sort of true value, either to our colleagues, to our practices, to our firms, or to our external clients, more and more, it is actually going beyond just doing the document work, doing the entries, doing the audits, doing the 1040s. And it's really having that education and expertise to actually be able to answer questions as to how the company is doing, and then trying to point out how these new opportunities, which are really developing so fast out there in blockchain and crypto, and also in AI and automation and RPA, how all of these things can be a positive impact to their practice going forward.
Just to that point real quickly, Sean, I think one of the interesting items, look, you've been prolific in this space, and we've been very privileged. You've done a lot of work publishing, particularly for the accounting professional, through Wall Street Blockchain Alliance, through your public articles in Forbes and other venues. But the resources are there. The primers you and the team you have created around DeFi and CBDC and stable coins for the accounting practitioner are publicly available. The work that we've done with AICPA and kind of the practice aid and the guides that they have, and even the work you and I earlier in the year, and late last year, worked on with ISACA on kind of blockchain frameworks and all of the stuff there, which has very real and direct relevance to the accounting professional. So I would just tie that last comment off with there are resources now available for the accounting professional in ways that they didn't have before.
Yes, and so probably like part one was 2017, 2018, right? Proving that the technology works, that blockchain works, that other crypto assets work. And so then during 2019, 2020, and the current year, 2021, sort of the educational content actually caught up, right? Via our efforts, other efforts out there, but I know that our group has been quite active, podcasts, white papers, collaborating with the AICPA and CPA.com, trying to get objective and unbiased sort of thought leadership out there, right? Trying to help people understand both on a terminology point of view and then on an impact point of view also how these tools are actually changing how we interact, right? Both inside our firms and outside our firms on a everyday basis. And so, as we, pivot towards 2022, which is only really just a couple short weeks away, are there any big topics or ideas that you are hoping to actually see either pass or come into the marketplace during 2022?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think
it's a loaded question. I know.
That's right up there with asking me to predict Bitcoin's price next year.
Well, actually, on that point, Ron, that's coming up next.
Yeah, well, I've given up predictions. It's never worked out for me. But look, I mean, I think there are a couple of there are macro trends that are happening that I think are really important. From the perspective of the accounting profession, and you and I have contributed to open commentary to FASB, to IRS, to other regulators as well. And I think what we'll continue to see are public and private companies holding crypto on their balance sheets. And I think that is an important consideration because this is not just about marketing fluff and Twitter tweets and stuff. It's really positioning them for how the global landscape of economics and corporate activity change. And I think people need to be prepared for that. I think we will see at some point a Bitcoin spot ETF, and I know that the government's taken particularly the regulators, a bit of I don't want to call it a darker turn, but certainly not as pro a turn at crypto as might have been seen previously with previous regulators. But that being said, those are the foundations for regulatory compliance that allow markets to grow. You and I have this conversation a lot. I have this conversation with the WSBA team and our board and our members. No one wants zero regulation. That's just bluntly not a workable thing for the world we live in. We want to protect investors where we can, and we want to do it in a way that doesn't stifle innovation. And doing that allows for greater adoption of new innovations like crypto and blockchain. I would love if we had better tax clarity. I think you probably saw it already, John. I think it was yesterday or this, maybe even this morning, that the IRS finalized the 1040 for next year, and they clarified the page one line around crypto. I haven't read it. I glanced at it briefly, and I think it clarifies some things, but it still leaves things a little bit unclear. And that lack of clarity is a difficult thing, particularly when you consider I think just about 50% of all Bitcoin holders became Bitcoin holders in the past year. So these are the things that need to evolve. And I suspect we'll start seeing solutions or at least some level of clarity in 2022. There's more, you know me, I'll just keep going, but I think that's some of what we should start talking about.
No, and I certainly hope so, right? Because right now, the regulatory outlook for blockchain and crypto, the IRS is in the pool, the OCC, SEC, CFTC, OFAC, the whole alphabet soup gang is in the pool offering their own points of view on how to treat, how to value, how to tax these things, not to mention the individual efforts underway at the state level. So hopefully, right, in 2022, some of this education that happened during 2021 can try to help better inform and clarify some of those policy choices going forward.
Yeah, and I think
so,
the interesting, sorry, just one of the interesting aspects of that is there's the regulatory conversations that we all have, and I think the other side of it that's important for the profession to be, the accounting professionals to be aware of, and global participants in this space is really the legislative viewpoint. The president's working group put out the stablecoin report. I think it was in November. I think there still needs to be work there, but when we look at some of the work that's happening on Capitol Hill, we're not a lobbying organization, Sean, as you know. But we do spend time with Congress, we spend time with the staffers there, and the tone and tempo of the language is getting interesting, and I think a bit more productive. When you look at some of the proposed legislation, the infrastructure bill had some stuff that was kind of ugly from the perspective of the crypto asset industry, but when you look at some of the proposed legislation, Senator Toomey's done some really great work there. That directly impacts the accounting professional. I think that's worth keeping an eye on as well.
Yeah. Yes, and to try to round out our conversation on a more upbeat, sort of lighthearted note here, Ron. So I have you here on the podcast. As of our recording, it's 12:02 p.m. Okay, I'm going to ask you right now, Ron, your year-end price target for Bitcoin, for both 2021 and to add some hot sauce in there, 2022.
Why do you do this to me? All right, so let me disclaimer this, as you know I will. Nothing that I'm saying is investment advice or recommendation.
Absolutely.
The board is very clear on that. So I think we're looking at some kind of volatile retrenchment across a lot of crypto. I will call 50K, which is kind of where we're bouncing around by end of year. I just don't think we'll see significant legs up between now and the end of the year. BTC on December 31st, 2022, I'll wager a good glass of wine, you and I will be over 100,000 at the end of 2022.
All right, you heard it here first.
No.
Year-end price target for 2022, over $100,000. What does that mean? 102 or $800,000? I don't know, but we're gonna see.
That's all I have to say about that.
All right, Ron, thank you so much for coming on our end of year podcast. So the year end wrap up and our sort of peek ahead into the coming year. Thank you so much, Ron. As always, it was a pleasure.
Sean, always a privilege. We've done so much great work, and it's such a privilege to have you chairing our accounting working group. We all have a lot planned for 2022, and I on behalf of the WSBA and to the extent I can speak about the accounting profession, you're one of the shining stars in the profession, and we're very grateful for all the work you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. Much appreciated.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.